Hi everyone, it's Sandy, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about my most disappointing reads of 2020. The books that I'm mentioning are going to be in order of when I picked them up, so I'm going to be starting off with the very first book that I found to be a disappointing read of the year, and that would be Permanent Record by Mary H.K. Choi. This story follows our main character Pablo, who is an NYU dropout and he works at this 24-hour deli. Pablo is Korean and Pakistani, and he's also experiencing a lot of debt. One day during one of his shifts, this pop star named Liana Smart walks in, and they kind of form a connection. Mary H.K. Choi is also the author of Emergency Contact, and unfortunately I did not enjoy that book as well, so I was hoping that going into this one I'd enjoy it more, but that was just not the case. I don't really know what it is about her writing style, but I also think her characters have a huge role in me not enjoying her stories as much. I just don't really feel invested in any of her characters. I do love the diversity in her stories and the different representations of mental health issues, but I just don't really know what it is about the writing style or her characters. I just don't love it. And from both of the books that I read from this author, I just don't feel invested, or I just don't care about these characters enough to really want to know how they end up. And also with this book, it's entirely told in Pablo's point of view, and I feel like I would have enjoyed the story a little bit more if we had Liana's point of view added into it. I love that both of the books that I've read follow characters that are either in college or no longer in high school, and I think it's really important to have more books with characters that are in this kind of transition phase of their life. And I just didn't really love the romance in the story between Pablo and Liana. I just felt like as soon as Liana entered Pablo's life, he pretty much dropped everything to be with her and to hang out with her, and I just didn't really love reading about that. So unfortunately, this is my first disappointing read of the year. My next disappointing read of the year is something that I'm really sad about because I really wanted to love this book, and that book is The Girl King by Mimi Yu. This is an own voices Asian-inspired fantasy that follows two sisters. First, we have Lu, who is destined to become the dynasty's first female ruler, and then we have her sister Min, who is pretty much living in Lu's shadow. However, on the day that Lu is supposed to be claimed as her father's heir, instead she is surprised when her father chooses her cousin Set to take the throne. So this story follows Lu as she's trying to reclaim her throne, while Min discovers that she has a power and is learning more about it. For this story, I want to give content warnings for sexual harassment, attempted rape, violence, and addiction. I really love the premise of the story, a princess trying to reclaim her birthright. Sign me up. But as I was reading this book, I thought that Lu was just constantly making super impulsive and dumb decisions, and I also found her to be like a super generic, supposedly badass and fierce main character. Along with her short temper and ego, she would just constantly say or do things that would make things worse for the situation that she's currently in. And then with the other sister Min, I thought she was just incredibly boring and naive. And then she's kind of put in this arranged marriage situation with her cousin Set. So the whole cousin situation being together thing was just a big no for me. And she did eventually develop some sort of feelings for Set, which just didn't make sense for me, and I just did not like that. Obviously, Set is like the villain in the story, and he's just like a caricature of the baddie. To me, like, his main characteristic is being power hungry and wanting to kill Lu, and that's pretty much it to his character. The magic system in this world is also really confusing. I feel like it's not really explained super well, and I'm sure we'll learn more about it in the second book, but I would have loved a little bit more of an explanation of, you know, how these powers came to be. Overall, I was unfortunately very disappointed in this book. I thought the characters felt basic and there was a lack of world building, and then with Lu's storyline, I felt like she just spent so many pages traveling and trying to reach her goal, but every single step forward that they would make, Lu would just do something that would take them multiple steps back, and so it was just really frustrating to read about. My next disappointing read is Final Girls by Riley Sager. This is an adult thriller following our main character Quincy, who 10 years ago when she was in college survived a massacre where all of her friends die and she is a lone survivor. By being the only survivor of this massacre, she becomes known as a final girl. There are also other final girls that she becomes connected to after this incident happens. So the story takes place 10 years later. Quincy is now an adult. She runs this popular baking blog, and it seems like she's moved on from everything that's happened. But one day, this other final girl was found dead in a bathtub, and people think that it's a suicide, but obviously it's not. So the death of this first final girl causes a whirlwind, and Quincy has to relive her past. So out of all of the books that I'm mentioning in this video, this isn't the most disappointing, but it is disappointing enough for me to include it in this video. I really love the concept of the story, but it was just so incredibly slow, and I honestly just didn't really care for the main character, and so because of that, I just didn't feel invested or engaged with the story. One of the main things I didn't like about the story was the incorporation of dissociative amnesia. I felt like it was just used as a cop-out to withhold information from the reader, and I just don't love those types of stories. It's something that's been used before in other stories, and I just didn't like the way that it was executed in this one. So unfortunately, it was a disappointing read, but I will have to say that I did not see the ending coming. So that's why I enjoyed this one slightly more than the other books on this list, but it was still disappointing enough for me to mention it in this video. My next disappointing read is also one that I'm sad to be including in this video, and that is Children of Virtue and Vengeance by Tomi Adeyemi. This is the second book to Children of Blood and Bone, which is a book that I really enjoyed, and so I was looking forward to reading this book, and I even reread the first book in preparation to go into this one. And I don't reread books very often, but I knew that I wouldn't enjoy this book as much if I didn't reread the story, and I still didn't enjoy this book as much even though I did. If you're not familiar with Children of Blood and Bone, it follows our main character Zaylee as she's trying to fight to bring magic back to her people. It's been described as Black Panther meets Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I definitely did see those parallels as I was reading the book. So with the sequel, I think it pretty much picks up where the last book ended. Since this is the second book, I'm not going to go into any in-depth spoilers or anything. I thought the plot of this book was just kind of all over the place. This just kind of felt like a filler book where a lot of things are going on, but nothing actually really happens. And also, some of these characters are just like so dumb. It was just so frustrating to read about some of the conflict that was happening between certain characters. There were also so many new characters that were introduced in the story that it was really hard to keep up with. So the story just wasn't what I was expecting. I was expecting something as great or even better as the first one, and unfortunately this was a huge letdown. My next disappointing read is The Guest List by Lucy Foley. This story centers around an exclusive wedding on a remote Irish island, and it's told in 5 different point of views. There are lots of secrets and drama in the story, and also someone dies. So throughout the story, you're just kind of figuring out who gets killed and who is the murderer. And honestly, this book was just really boring. I did not care about any of these characters. I felt like all of them were very unlikable. And unlikable characters isn't necessarily a bad thing, but if every single character is unlikable, then I'm less likely to enjoy the story. I just felt like there were a lot of toxic relationships in the story, and you know, that's pretty common for like thriller or mystery books, but it was just overwhelmingly toxic. This book is slightly over 300 pages, and it took me over 10 days to read. Usually I can finish a book in about a week or less than that. This just took way too long for me to finish considering how short it was, so I feel like that's a huge indicator that I didn't really care to pick this book up and to finish it right away. There were some twists in the story that I was surprised by, but overall I was not a fan. My next disappointing read is one that I'm most scared to mention in this video, and that is The Starless C by Erin Morgenstern. Going into the story, I feel like the story was going to be either a hit for me or a miss, and there would be no in between, and unfortunately it was a miss. I knew that this was a story that I was going to get through very slowly, and it wasn't the pacing of the story that I didn't enjoy. It was the fact that I was just so damn confused. Honestly, I don't even know how to describe what the story is about, but it focuses on this main character named Zachary, who is at this library one day and he discovers this mysterious book that has no author. He decides to check it out and he's reading the book, and as a reader we get to read the book that he's checked out. He gets through a couple of chapters and then he eventually reaches a story that depicts a childhood moment of his. So he's really confused about the existence of this book and how a childhood moment of his was included. So that's kind of how the story starts off. This story is just very whimsical, and I was able to kind of get on board with it for the first like 50 to 60% of the story. And even though there were parts where I was confused, I felt like I did understand most of what was happening, and I was enjoying reading it even though I was getting through it very slowly. Once I hit that 60 or 70% mark of the book, things just kind of took a turn in the story, and the entire second half I was just like, what the fuck is going on? Because I have no damn clue. I don't understand a single thing that is happening. And because of that last second half of the book, my rating just went completely downhill. And so with this book, we're following Zachary as he's trying to learn more about this mysterious book that he found, as well as us getting to read chapters from this mysterious book. And so every time we would jump from Zachary's perspective to the chapters of the book that he found, it just felt very disconnected and abrupt, and I just didn't love it all the time. Some of the chapters from this book are so boring, but other chapters are really great and I loved it. And I really love seeing how parts of the book is incorporated into reality. But overall, I eventually reached a point where I had no clue what was happening, and because of that, I really could not enjoy it. I can definitely see why people say Erin Morgenstern has beautiful writing. The writing is very whimsical and the story itself is very whimsical. I'm just generally not a huge fan of those types of writing and stories. My next disappointing read is The Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu, and I'm also very sad to be including this book on this list because Marie Lu is honestly one of my favorite authors. I've read her entire Legend trilogy, I've read the entire Young Elites, I read the Warcross duology, and so this one I had to read from her. This is definitely different than the other books that she's written, but because it's Marie Lu, I knew that I had to read it. This is a YA historical fantasy standalone, and it follows the sister of Mozart, that's right, the very well-known composer, musician, Mozart. Everyone pretty much knows who Mozart is, but no one really knows about his sister. And so with this book, it gives the sister a narrative, and there is a fantasy element to it. The main character herself is a very gifted composer as well, but because she's living in the 18th century, it's not allowed for women to become composers. So even though she's able to play music, she's pretty much on the sidelines while her brother is becoming very well-known and famous. All she wants is to be able to compose music and to be well-known, and so one day she's approached by this mysterious stranger who grants her her wish, and obviously there are consequences with that wish. I'm not a huge historical fiction reader in general, but being that it was written by Marie Lu, I did want to pick it up. I don't really have any specific things about this book that I didn't like on this list is because I love Marie Lu and I love her books, so I had really high expectations going into it, and this book just ended up being okay, so I was disappointed in the fact that I didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to. I did enjoy reading about the sibling relationship between the main character and her brother, but I thought the main character was just kind of bland and I wanted more from her. I didn't love the pacing of the story. It was pretty slow, and I was surprised by how dark it actually got, which isn't a thing that I disliked about the story, but overall I just didn't love the fantasy element of the story, and that's like a huge part of it. And my last disappointing read of 2020 is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you know that I love Jennifer Lynn Barnes' books. I especially love the Naturals series and the Fixer. The Naturals is always my #1 recommendation, and so obviously I was really looking forward to reading this new book from this author. I usually don't see a lot of people talking about Jennifer Lynn Barnes, so when this book came out and people were actually talking about it, I was like, oh my gosh, people are talking about this, they're enjoying it, I must enjoy it too, and unfortunately that was not the case. So this book is described as a Cinderella story that is perfect for fans of Knives Out. And fun fact, I actually watched Knives Out at the beginning of summer and I really enjoyed that movie, but I didn't know that this book was compared to it, so when I was reading it I was like, why does this story seem so familiar? So if you like Knives Out, then you might enjoy this story. This story follows our main character Avery. She's like 16 or 17 years old. Her mom has passed away and she's living with her older sister. One day she receives a letter that explains that she has received an inheritance from Tobias Hawthorne, who is a billionaire. She has no connection to this man, so she's like, why the hell is he leaving me money? But she does what she's asked to, and she goes to the reading of the will, and she finds out that Tobias Hawthorne essentially leaves a majority of his fortune to Avery. And so the entire Hawthorne family is like, who the hell is she? Why does she get all the money? And so there's a lot of drama concerning that whole situation. One of the conditions of the will is that Avery has to live in the Hawthorne house, and she, along with the 4 Hawthorne grandsons who are around her age, finds out that Tobias Hawthorne actually left behind this sort of riddle that they all get involved in trying to figure out in hopes of getting answers as to why Avery was included in the will in the first place. So with the Natural series, there were a lot of twists and turns that just kept me engaged and at the edge of my seat, but with this book, I just thought that the whole book wasn't super exciting. I liked Avery, I thought she's really smart, but there really wasn't anything about her that made me care. And there was also like a love triangle type of thing that happened in the story that I really didn't like. And I was also really disappointed by the ending because I felt like we didn't get many answers and that we were left with even more questions. I actually do want to read the sequel to see where the story goes next, but I'm not like super excited or pumped to get into it. Those are all of my most disappointing reads of 2020. If you've read any of these books, I would love to know your thoughts, even if it's completely different than mine. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Bye!